This episode of My Hollywood Story was recorded live at Soho House, West Hollywood. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, leave a review, and let us know what you think. Hello and welcome to My Hollywood Story. I'm Stacey Wilson Hunt. My guest today is the Academy Award-winning actor and activist Marlee Matlin, who, at age 21, became the youngest ever Best Actress winner in 1987 for her work in Children of a Lesser God. I've had the pleasure of speaking to Marlee now for about a decade, and I'm consistently blown away by the humor and honesty she infuses into her work as an actor who happens to be deaf, and also her outspokenness as one of our industry's leading disability activists. Listen in as Marlee recalls how her tumultuous real-life romance with her late co-star William Hurt colored her Oscar night experience, the thrills she felt in seeing her CODA co-star Troy Kotsur become the second deaf performer to win an Oscar, and how it felt to have her life and work featured in Shoshanna Stern's incredibly moving documentary, Marlee Matlin, Not Alone Anymore. A quick note for our audio listeners. The voice that you hear is that of Marlee's longtime friend and ASL interpreter, Jack Jason. Welcome. So wonderful to see you again. I had the pleasure of meeting you a few years ago, and you were just as amazing as I hoped. So it's so nice to have you here. I'm so honored. So I had the pleasure of seeing the incredible documentary, Marlee Matlin, Not Alone Anymore, at Sundance earlier this year, and I was so moved by it. It's a beautiful testament to you and your legacy, and I look so forward to talking about that in a moment. But before that, I want to talk about where you come from. Your story begins in Morton Grove, Illinois. Can you tell me what your earliest memory is from childhood?
Ooh, well, first of all, thank you all for coming out today. It's so nice to meet you all in person. Anyway, and I have a tattoo actually that says Morton Grove right here on my forearm, right there. Love it. So there you can see that. Anyway, that's how much I love Morton Grove. And Morton Grove, well, it's probably one of the best cities, towns, that I've ever had the experience of living in. The only town I've ever actually lived in, really. But it's a town that has always made me feel grounded and happy. And it is just that kind of place.
So you don't feel grounded and happy in Los Angeles?
Not to say that. I moved here when I was an adult, so we're talking about my childhood. And that was after my Oscar and all that kind of stuff. And I was now sober when I wasn't back then. So, but Morton Grove holds a special place in my heart. Everything happened there, the roller skating, going to the movies, best friends, family, snow. In fact, right now it's snowing there as we speak. And I have two older brothers who still live in Chicago, actually outside of Morton Grove, but close enough. And it's just, anytime someone says, "Where are you from?" And I'll say Illinois, and then I'll say, "Where are you from?" And they'll say, "Oh, Chicago." And I say, "Where in Chicago?" "Oh, outside of Chicago." "Where outside of Chicago?" Get to the point. Northern suburbs of Chicago. "Where in the northern suburbs of Chicago?" And then we finally get to the place where we say, Morton Grove. But yeah, I'm always excited anytime someone tells me that they're from Chicago in general.
Well, my mom is from Chicago, from Oak Park. And,
okay.
And my dad is from Decatur, Illinois. So fellow Illinoisans.
Exactly.
That's why
we're all family, so to speak.
We are all Midwestern family.
Go Cubs.
Exactly. So much has been made, and you've discussed at great length and so wonderfully shared your story about being deaf. And you became deaf, if that's the right term, or you were diagnosed as being deaf at age 18 months. So to what did you owe this diagnosis? Was it an illness, or was it possibly something you were born with?
Actually, I drank probably the wrong bottle of water. No, I'm just kidding. I became deaf at 18 months due to something that we actually don't know. We don't know. My parents found out that I was deaf actually here in California while we came out here for a cousin's wedding. And according to my brother, who told me many years later, maybe 10 years ago, actually maybe 15 years ago, that I was ill with a fever at home in Chicago, and my parents didn't want to leave me at home alone, so we had to fly out to California for this cousin's wedding. And not to put a guilt trip on my parents or to blame them, but apparently during the flight here, and apparently I lost my hearing as a result of the flight. When my parents and my brothers went to the wedding and left me with a babysitter, my grandmother's best friend, a neighbor, they came back home from the wedding, and the babysitter told my parents that I was deaf. And my father said, no, she's not deaf, she's just stubborn. Which I was. I mean, by the way, I was. And yes, and continue to be, yes. And so, and then he said, no, she's not deaf. They flew home, put me to bed that night. My father looked at me sort of with a question in his mind. And typically parents of deaf children who are in denial, what they'll do is they'll take a pot and a wooden spoon and bang the pot, and they'll discover, and because in my case they didn't, that's what they do, there's no reaction. So my father then took me to the doctor, who confirmed the fact that I was deaf. And to the day that they both passed, they carried this guilt with them. But when I mentioned to them that my brother, out of the fact that I was ill during the flight, they denied that that was the case. Listen, I told them that I don't have any reason to blame them or to feel, I just wanted to have a conversation, an open, transparent conversation about how I became deaf and how is it that they felt and how is it, I just wanted them to just, let's talk about it. I don't want to assign blame to anyone, but they couldn't deal with it. And we never had this conversation really at all. So I've decided to decide that it's not important. What they gave me was a childhood that was full of love and respect. And that's what I can do.
Thank you for sharing that. Did you take speech lessons when you were very young? And then at what age did you learn ASL?
So when I was young, I talked a lot before I became deaf apparently, and I spoke words. My brothers told me that I kept saying brother. Parents never really went into detail about what it was like as a hearing child before I became deaf. They never did, because it was very painful for them to talk about what it was like as a hearing baby. So my brother, Mark, who is the second oldest, said to me that I spoke a lot of words. And then when I became deaf, I was silent. My parents took me to an oral school, which meant that it was a school that focused on speaking alone without any sign language. Sign language was prohibited, which I actually do remember. I was 3 years old. I went to this oral school, which tried to teach me how to speak without any sign. You just sat on your hands. And I didn't like the fact that they were trying to make me speak. It was such a weird, I guess, energy. The dynamics of the school was just strange. It felt like I was being forced to do something that wasn't, it was alien to me. I felt like it was strange. But then one day, when I was 5, after dinner, and I remember this vividly, my parents told me that we were going out after dinner. Going out after dinner? It was close to my bedtime. Where are we going? I didn't know. So we went to a class where I was the only child I was 5 years old, in a room full of adults sitting in a circle, all of them were adults, with one deaf teacher. I sat down across from the teacher, and I mean, to my astonishment, he used his hands to communicate. But what was he doing? He started to use and sign the alphabet in sign language, in ASL, A, B, C, like this. And my life changed at that very moment, that night. So I was speaking, as I said, but then I was using my hands at the same time. So both worlds, I mean, I signed and I spoke. I signed and I spoke. I went back and forth between the two. I was a little confused because there's a world of speaking and there's a world of signing. And there were friends who only spoke and there were friends who only signed. And the hearing friends and the deaf friends were in separate communities, and I didn't know or understand what my identity was for the longest time. But at the same time, I loved speaking as well as signing. I loved the ability to take speech classes. Most of my deaf friends hated them. And they also hated wearing hearing aids. I loved wearing hearing aids, and I still do love wearing hearing aids because I understood for me, the benefit that they provided for me.
So it's a very individual choice, depending on what you feel comfortable with.
Absolutely. I understand that I needed it for my own good,
And when did you start to feel like an artist, like a performer? What was your first exposure to acting or seeing something that you thought, wow, that's magical, I want to try to do that?
Well, I loved The Wizard of Oz as a kid. The first time I saw it was probably maybe 6 or 7 years old. And that was before closed captions. And then I went to summer camp. I was 7 years old, and I was asked to perform on a stage, and I didn't know what she was talking about. What's a stage? What are you talking about? And a woman, the director, showed me what the stage was and asked me to stand on the stage, and she wanted me to sign a song with a group of hearing campers behind me, and she would stand in the front to to imitate what she was signing. And it was a song called John Brown's Body Lies Moldering in His Grave or something like that. And so I said, okay, fine. So I copied what she did, and just like that, I had a sense of rhythm. I could follow her. I knew what the rhythm was. And the night of the performance, there were friends and family and teachers and counselors and all that. And all of them clapping and waving. And I mean, I just loved the response that I got. And that's when I learned that was what acting was.
So you enjoyed the emotional response you got from the audience and the connection to you.
I did. And of course, combine that with my love of watching television and movies. My mother discovered a small theater close to our house called the Center on Deafness, where they put on productions. And the first production actually was The Wizard of Oz. And I guess that's what I got. I mean, of course, that's where I got the role of Dorothy.
And you played Dorothy.
I did. And I loved the experience there. And I grew up there at the center. I had all the lead roles. I just, for some reason, the natural, it was natural for me. I never went to acting school. It was just something within me. I mean, I just grew up acting. I loved music, and I don't know what exactly it is.
It's magic. So
I guess.
I personally think acting is magic. I don't understand it. I find it to be a supernatural skill set. So you had quite the mentor early on in Henry Winkler. Tell me about meeting him when you were 12 years old.
So Henry Winkler was visiting Chicago with the cast of Happy Days. And we had a benefit, so happened, at the same time at the Center on Deafness, and I was 12 years old. And we found out that he was coming to the town with the cast of Happy Days. So the center sent him a letter to invite him to come to watch us perform. And he said yes, because he had a day off. And when I found out, I mean, I was thrilled. And I wanted to make sure that I rehearsed my solo song to the best of my ability. It was Kiss the Day Goodbye. Actually, it was called What I Did for Love. And as soon as I finished that song and everybody was ready to leave, I sought out Henry and went right up to him. I introduced myself, and I told him that I wanted to be an actor in Hollywood just like him, in Hollywood. I mean, it's not the small potatoes, Center on Deafness kind of performances, but Hollywood. I wanted to be exactly like him in Hollywood because I had seen him on Happy Days, but then I saw a particular episode with an actress named Linda Bove, who was a deaf actress. She was on Sesame Street, a deaf actress on Sesame Street. I mean, why? If she could do it, why can't I do it? And he began to give me some advice, but then my mother, God bless her soul, interrupted Henry, took him aside and said, you know what? Perhaps try to calm her enthusiasm. Try not to tell her that she could, of course, be an actor in Hollywood, just like anybody else. Try to steer her in a different direction, perhaps go to college, because how is Hollywood going to give a deaf girl a chance? That's probably not going to happen, especially because she's deaf. I mean, she would get rejected. Just to say, I mean, if hearing people could get rejected, she would. Henry looked at her and said, you know what? You've got the wrong man. So he turned around, knelt down and said, Marlee, sweetheart, you could be anything you want to be. Just follow your heart, and your dreams will come true. And don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. And then what happened? 8.5 years later, I had an Oscar in my hand. So what do you know?
Yes, thank you so much to Henry Winkler. He's a wonderful man. So
He is.
He is. And he is just, I think, so supportive of people and has such a huge heart. And he himself struggled with dyslexia.
I thought I was the only person who had the huge heart. No, anyway.
Both of you. But I think his struggles with dyslexia have given him such empathy and really just so warm and welcoming. And I'm so glad you connected with him.
Absolutely.
So your first professional acting job was a small role in Children of a Lesser God in 1985 in Chicago. And of course, this is the story of a young woman who works at a New England school for the deaf who falls in love with a new teacher. When did you find out that a local agent had submitted your tape to director Rhonda Haynes for consideration for the feature film?
So actually, it was my brother. I'm going to go back. My brother found out about the auditions for the stage production, a small stage production. It was called the Independent Theater in Chicago. And I told him that I initially didn't want to do it, really. I didn't want to perform because at the time, I had a boyfriend who didn't want me to be an actor. He wanted me to marry him because he wanted to open a shoe store. And so I was like, okay.
This sounds like a bad match.
Shoe store or act? Shoe store or act? Which one do I want to choose from? So I didn't listen to him, obviously. And I auditioned because my brother literally dragged me to the audition for the play. And I got the role of the secondary supporting role of Lydia right there on the spot. And on opening night, there was a woman, Gretchen Rennell, the casting director, who she's still around, by the way, sent someone to, on behalf of Paramount, to look at us in Chicago and watch us on opening night, and then the next day filmed each one of us in our specific roles. I did my part. Then after that, they told me, because Rhonda Haynes, who was the director of the film, saw me in the background and said, who was that? According to what we said in the documentary and what I saw, she said, is that, who's that in the background? When I heard that she wanted me to audition for the role of Sarah, I said, no, that's not for me, because my friend who was playing Sarah on stage, I thought was absolutely the most brilliant, talented actors
Would
out
you
there.
have felt disloyal to your friend in taking that role?
I was feeling like that already. I didn't want to feel disloyal, but I apologized to her just recently, maybe last year, when we had sat down and had lunch, and she told me, no, that's not the case. But so I auditioned on film, and I met with William Hurt in New York City while we were doing the production of the stage play. So my understudy loved it, because I was going back and forth from New York to Los Angeles a lot. And then I had a screen test for 2 weeks here, a week of studying with an acting coach, then a week of shooting a screen test here in Los Angeles in Culver City at the MGM studios there.
And in the documentary, we see your audition tape, or at least your chemistry read with William Hurt. And I know it's a very complicated subject. You've written about it. It's in the documentary, your relationship with the late William Hurt. And we can talk a little bit about that later. But I do want to know what you felt in that moment with him as a fellow artist. What is that chemistry that we see in that tape? It's very striking.
The first time I met him, when I heard that he was in the film, I mean, I had already been a huge fan of his from a movie called Altered States. And then he did The Big Chill. So I knew who he was, and I was a big fan of his. And I was excited to meet him. And we met at the Niederlander Hotel. And I was 19 at the time, 19. And I was being cool about it. I was being very cool about it. But I told myself, okay, this is a one-shot thing, okay? Just do it. And I did it.
Were you scared?
No, I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared. I don't want to sound like I'm on some sort of ego trip, but I knew, I just thought of just doing it. Because I knew that they were looking for this person to cast in this role. They'd been looking for 4 years. And they started with hearing actors playing deaf. I think they started with perhaps Jane Fonda. They wanted big names. And Mark Menoff specifically, who wrote the play, specifically said, no, you cannot do that, had a control over the rights of it. And so then they started looking for deaf actors to play the role. And when I got the role, the deaf community was like, who the hell is Marlee Matlin? I'm just a girl from Morton Grove, Illinois, I guess.
So flash forward to, you find out you're nominated for an Oscar, and I hear that you found this out in an unusual place. Where were you when you found out this news?
Oh, right, okay. I was at the Betty Ford Clinic, in rehab, getting myself rehabilitated.
And how did it feel to get that news when you're going through such an intense transition in your personal life?
So the way it happened is I put myself into rehab for my drug addiction. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. My counselor woke me up. I was petrified because I thought, I'm getting a phone call at 5 o'clock in the morning about somebody who died in the family. Because those kind of calls that people get early in the morning. And she said, no, everything's okay, don't worry, it's all good. So she motioned for me to come over to the phone. So I went with her, and they used to have these things called teletypewriters for deaf people to communicate. Of course, they're obsolete now, but people use them. And she said, here. And it was Jack who was calling me, and he said, there is a nomination. Am I talking to one of the nominated actresses? I didn't even know that there was nomination day because I'd been in rehab. I didn't know that it was that day. I was totally removed from reality. I was from the outside world. I was totally 1,000% focused on my getting better, helping myself, recovering. And wow, okay, I got nominated. And he asked me, is there anything you want to say to the public, to the press? And so I thought to myself, well, one thing is everybody was asleep, so what am I going to say? So I said, you know what, I'll scream later, as sort of an ironic statement. And that's actually the title of my autobiography, I'll Scream Later. And I looked, and my counselor was, with her, and she said, okay, good, congratulations. And then she goes, okay, go back to your room and clean up. And so I did.
You were very humbled at the same time, essentially.
Yeah, it'll now be 39 years that I'm sober.
Congratulations, Marlee.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Best gift I could have given myself.
Absolutely. So something that we see in the documentary, which is hard to watch, there are a lot of moments that I think are hard to watch in a good way, is when you found out that you were going to win the Oscar, when they called your name that day in 1987, you were afraid to go on stage because William was actually the presenter, and you knew that he was actually going to be upset and or jealous that you were winning and he wasn't. Were you able to appreciate that moment on stage and feel proud, even though you had tumult in your romance at the time?
That was a moment that, well, because remember, I was 21 years old. I was very petrified, knowing that I am confused and hopeful that he would be happy for me, hoping, and there was some ounce of hope in him for me that I won the award. But I wasn't sure. That's why I didn't, when they called my name, I looked at him and I wasn't sure if he was actually joking or not. But then I knew he couldn't be doing this live in front of millions of people as a joke. And then he signed my name. And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. He's serious. And there was just a multitude of thoughts going through my head. And that's why I didn't hug Jack or his half-brother who was sitting next to me. I was in my own little focused world, and I was alone, feeling alone. And that's also why I didn't grab the Oscar from him. It was, I didn't prepare a speech. I didn't expect to win. When we sat in the limo afterwards, and that's not actually in the documentary, and I'm so happy because I had my shoes off. My feet were killing me. And I put the Oscar down next to me because he was sitting actually across from me. He decided not to sit next to me. I thought, okay, fine, I'll just put it down on the seat next to me. He sat across from me, and he looked at me, and he took a beat, and I was like, look at this. He looked at me, and he goes, yeah, I see that little man, that little gold man next to you. I was like, yeah, right? What the fuck is he gonna say? And he said, what makes you think you deserved it? Because so many people took a long time to get this award that you got with one movie. And the rest of the night was a blur.
I'm sorry that happened. That's really hard to hear.
He was nominated for the same film. And I remember standing by the wings, hoping that he would win too. But when Paul Newman, as much as he deserved to win the Oscar, when he won, I was disappointed. Selfishly disappointed. Yeah.
So a year later, you would return to the Oscars and present, as winners often present the following year. And something interesting happened that night. You caused some controversy within deaf culture by speaking on stage. I want to talk about that inflection point, how you felt about what came next, because I think you were surprised by the reaction to that choice. So walk me through that.
You know, it seemed at the time like I couldn't win for trying. I couldn't win for trying. So when I got to present Best Actor, for 6 months prior, I worked with Dr. Lillian Glass, who is I think she's a speech pathologist or a speech therapist or something like that, therapist, in Beverly Hills. And we worked to go over all the names, the potential names of nominees. And I went once a week, and she threw out all kinds of names to me, and she threw me names that I didn't even know or were almost impossible for me to say. But regardless, I had the best time working with her, and I learned to pronounce each and every names I didn't know that I had a problem saying the word R, saying the letter R or the letter S. So that night, I decided to first sign my introduction. Then it was time for me to stop signing and pronounce the names of the 5 nominees. And the right person, Michael Douglas, came up to get the Oscar, so I must have said the name right. The next thing I knew was a small but very vocal group of deaf activists said I spoke and didn't sign as a means to give the impression, actually I was sending a message to parents of deaf babies that the best way to educate your child is to teach them only to speak and not to sign. And that was the best approach. That's what I was representing. And I said, hold on, time out. That was not my intention. My intention was to show everyone in Hollywood that I could speak. That's all. And I was just a young girl trying to grow up.
That's a lot of pressure and seems very unfair. Yeah.
It was a great deal of pressure. And so it wasn't fair only because at the time I had no one to guide me through the process. I had to do everything by myself.
Tell me about the Television Decoder Circuitry Act of 1990 and your involvement in this seminal piece of legislation.
So I decided at one point in my life to advocate for closed captioning because this was something that I've always wanted to have on my television screen.
And you would watch The Wizard of Oz without closed captioning.
So, for example, I watched it without captions, and I made up my own stories that Dorothy was trying to do, whatever she was trying to do, what she was singing about with the scarecrow, with the lion, everything that was going on, what Oz was trying to say to them. I had no idea what they were saying, and so I made up my own story until I finally saw the movie with captions. I was like, what? That's what they're talking about? That's not the story I imagined at all. And so everything went out the window, what I imagined. I mean, even shows like Happy Days or Three's Company, all those movies that I watched over the years without captions. And I was one of the millions of deaf and hard of hearing people that really were thirsting for what was being said on television, whether we're talking about the news or entertainment. My hearing family members, were so tired of having to interpret what was being said, going back and forth, being deprived of language. So I felt it was up to me, because I had the advantage of being in the media spotlight, because I had a name that I could take advantage of that and appear before Congress and say, look, hey, it's crucial for us to be included with this issue of accessibility, to spread the message that we need to be included. And they all, the senators who were there, said, agreed. They said, yay, that all televisions 13 inches or longer should have the technology that allowed for closed captions to appear. And how many of you watch TV with captions nowadays? You're welcome. So no, I mean, it was important. Everyone watches television with captions. It's all, I mean, there's 300 different languages that are captioned. There's captions on airplanes, there's captions in gymnasiums, there's captions in bars. It's what it is.
Thank you for that. So I want to talk about some roles that followed your Oscar win, starting with Reasonable Doubts on NBC. You played Tess Kaufman, an assistant DA who is opposite a gruff police detective played by Mark Harmon. And the show lasted 2 seasons, and I remember watching it. It was very good. Can you contextualize for us just how history-making it was to see a deaf actor leading a series on a major broadcast network?
So it was one of the rarest of things that had ever happened, particularly because on network television, it was rare to see a deaf actor leading a TV show on network TV. It was unheard of, and I think it's still unheard of today. There is no deaf actor leading or carrying a television show. Warren Littlefield, who was the head of NBC at the time, and the show was shot at Warner Brothers. So it was a Warner Brothers production on an NBC network show. When we met, actually it was me and Robert Singer, who produced the show. Mark Harmon was already on board. And Bob Singer and I had met, and he told me what his idea was, and I said, sure. So we met with Warren Littlefield in his office, and we pitched him, and he said, yes, right there. They said yes. And the rest is history. I had so much fun working on that show, so much fun. I wasn't sure why the show didn't continue beyond 2 years. It was on probably one of the worst nights of television against Roseanne, against all the shows that kept moving our show. Law and Order hadn't happened yet, and look, it's still on. But it just didn't work for some reason. I probably can expand more, but I don't want to blame anyone. It's unfortunate that it didn't continue as long as it did. But yeah, it was. Anyway.
Well, we're glad that it lasted at least 2 seasons. So speaking of Warren Littlefield, someone I greatly admire and adore, he essentially created must-see TV. He got Seinfeld on the air, he got Friends on the air, Frasier, etc. And speaking of Seinfeld, you appeared in one of my favorite episodes of all time, season 5, called The Lip Reader, written by Carol Leifer. And for those who don't recall, you played Laura, a tennis lineswoman whom Jerry is dating, who helps George read the lips of an ex-girlfriend at a party. Because of course, George would ask someone to do that. So I'm assuming your relationship with Warren helped facilitate this, but tell me, was this written for you? Did Jerry want you to play this role? How did this happen for you?
So actually, I was in New York City at the time, and I got a call from my agent, Carla Hacken. And I was at the gym apparently one day, they told me. Thank goodness I went to the gym that morning. And I remember that morning I was across from Brad Pitt at the gym. Brad Pitt. And we were doing pull downs like this. Hi, Brad. Hi. He was like, hello, Marlee. And it so happened that Larry David was also at the gym. He saw me. He told me, and Brad too, saw me, and he told Carol to write an episode that involved me. And it was simple as that.
How much fun was it for you to be able to be funny?
It was one of the most terrifying experiences I've ever had that first day, because when I stepped onto the set, first of all, I saw 4 or 5 cameras. And I was worried about blocking camera 4 or camera 3 or camera 2 as I was, my back was to this. And they finally had to explain to me, the cast members said, look, Marlee, don't worry about it. Just let us handle the camera and let us do our job. And I said, okay, fine. And I mean, it's called editing, and just do your thing, just do your lines as you're supposed to do. And they were so accommodating. I get a lot of attention and compliments. Just walking down the street almost every day, people still approach me about the show. People throw me lines, they want me to reply back. They still do. And, sweep, do you want to sweep with me instead of sleep with me? Sex versus 6, yes, 6. Do you want to have 6? Do you want to meet at 6? So, yeah, it was nice.
The Seinfeld legacy never dies, thankfully. So speaking of NBC, I want to talk about another show on the network, The West Wing. You appeared in 17 episodes playing Joey Lucas, a very outspoken political pollster. And one of my favorite scenes in this series is your first. You barge into a very hungover Josh Lyman's office and call him a, quote, unmitigated jackass. Playing opposite, we have a mutual friend in Bradley Whitford, the great Bradley Whitford. How did Aaron Sorkin's writing on The West Wing change your relationship with acting and also with storytelling?
So just to give you a little background, Aaron had another show on the air where there was a deaf character that you didn't see. It was off camera. It was on a character who had a deaf sister. So I thought, when I heard about this, why not have that deaf sister be seen and played by me? So I wrote him a note, or I called his office. And he said, let's meet in person instead. So we met for Chinese food in Beverly Hills. And the 3 of us, Jack and I and Aaron, met and we talked. And he said, look, I have another show on the air that's coming up, and that I'd like to be able to put you into that. And that was The West Wing. He wrote it for me like on the spot, and it was as simple as that. That's how the show happened. And actually, you can see that whole story. He's probably one of the most brilliant writers, and probably one of the most astute. I mean, he got me. And there was one time in particular, as you said, I played a pollster, where I had to deal with numbers, as a pollster does, a lot of numbers. And I remember thinking to myself, oh gosh, that's a lot of numbers that I have to sign. So I asked Aaron, do you mind if I sort of give an abbreviation of the numbers? I mean, I could just do that. And he goes, no, Marlee, you have to sign it exactly as it is. And he and David Kelly write me in the same way. They wrote me the same way. They had a similar style of approach.
And David was Picket Fences. You worked with him on Picket Fences.
On Picket Fences and The Practice, both those shows. Both of them have a similar style where they think that sign language is equivalent to spoken language in terms of the presentation on screen. To honor those 2 languages the same way.
So one of my favorite scenes in the documentary is Aaron talking about this. And he says, it's not hard to include deaf performers in these shows. He's essentially calling out the business and saying, stop with the excuses. This isn't difficult. I really appreciated him saying that. Yeah.
That's the point I've been making. That's what you call a smart writer.
And it helps the storytelling. That's the best part.
Exactly.
So I'd like to talk now about The L Word on Showtime. 29 episodes you played Jody Lerner. And Jody is an artist who falls in love with Jennifer Beals' character, Bet. The inclusion of this character for me felt like a major watershed moment in our culture, showcasing the intersection of queerness and disability. And you have long been an advocate for the LGBTQ plus community and people with disabilities. And I wanted to know, what did it mean for you to be able to capture 2 community's experiences in such a funny and incredibly sexy way, I must say. This show was very sexy. Tell me what that meant to you.
Well, first of all, I grew up with a gay brother. So, I mean, we were best friends. My brother Mark, the second youngest in our family, who always was...
When did he know he was gay or tell you he was gay?
I think it was always there, just there. He came out to me, I made a decision. He made a decision. When I was 17, he asked me to meet him for lunch, and we sat and met for lunch, and was ready to order on a menu or something, and he put down the menu, and he said, "I'm gay." And I said, "Okay, what are we having for lunch?" That was it. It was pretty simple. And so he was with his husband for 40 years. Unfortunately, he just passed away 2 years ago. But he's coming by for Thanksgiving next week. I had lots of gay friends growing up, and so it so happened that was fine. And my son is gay as well. I have 4 kids. So it's always been a part of my life. And in fact, I introduced my son to his boyfriend. That being said, the L word, I was approached by Eileen Chaikin. We met, and she asked me how I felt about playing Jennifer Beals' girlfriend. And I said, "Do I have to?" And the reason I said that is because she was like, "Wait, what do you mean? You don't want to play Jennifer Beals' girlfriend?" And I said, "Well, she's one of my closest friends. And from the beginning of my entry into the business, we've been friends. She was in Flashdance a year before I did Children of the Lesser God. And we've been very close friends ever since. And there's a whole story about how we met at Paramount Studios. I asked Eileen, I'd do the show on one condition, to play Jodie Lerner. The character originally had a different name. And I asked if she could change her name to Jodi, Jodi, which happened to be one of the parents of my kids' friends who passed away. She was married to a woman too as well, and she had passed away. So Eileen said, "Of course I would do that." And so Jodie Lerner was an experience that I just loved. It's so dear to my heart. Such a different world, but I understood who she was. And deaf and queer was just, I learned a great deal, but at the same time, it was just what it is.
It's just life.
Absolutely shows life.
So I'd like to talk about Family Guy now. You did 8 episodes playing Peter's coworker, Stella.
So what deaf person would want to do an animated series with her voice? But I did that voice. It's pretty cool, I think. So the way it happened, I don't remember meeting Seth beforehand, but getting hired. But I did, well, you remember how it happened? How you got the show? They did an imitation of you, and you called up and you said, "Hey, if you're going to use me. Don't have you imitate me." It was the episode where you fart. Oh, yeah. My kids' friends told them, they came home from school and said, "Mom, they made fun of you on the show." I said, Good. That's good. Then Jack called to say, "If you're going to use Marlee, use Marlee." And so they hired me to work in the sound booth playing Stella.
Did they apologize?
No, they didn't have to apologize. They didn't have to apologize at all. It was making fun. Why not? It was fun.
Well, you're obviously a great sport and very funny.
Yeah, no, why not? Listen, as long as they use me for the show, then that's good, as long as I can poke fun at myself.
Right. And you have the power in that scenario. Well, I loved it. I thought it was so funny. And I'd like to talk now about Switched at Birth, another history-making show, a show I discovered recently. It's so beautiful. I love the show. You played a woman named Melody, and it was on Freeform, 103 episodes. And the series made history for its depictions of deafness, young people, class, and wealth, and a number of other topics. I'm curious what kind of feedback you got from young people who watched this show, and what would a show like this have meant to you as a teenager?
Well, I wished I had that show when I was younger. It would have been really groundbreaking, and it would have empowered me to know that there were people out there like me, young people like me on television. Today, even now, so many people come up to me and said it inspired them to learn American Sign Language. As hearing people, but as deaf people too, it inspired them to be able to want to be actors as well, because there were so many deaf actors who got work on that show. It worked both ways, both for hearing people to learn sign language and deaf people to learn that they could be actors, or, it worked both ways. And you got the best of both worlds with that show. But it was a great, fun show to work with, and even though I wasn't part of the core cast, there was a lot of, I felt like I was sort of the old guard. It was fun watching the young actors working on the show and growing on the show, turning into wonderful, incredible actors. The storylines were great. And yeah.
And what kind of support did the deaf actors have on set that didn't exist when you were starting out?
There were a lot of interpreters on the set. I wish they had more deaf writers. They didn't at the time. Did they have deaf consultants? Yeah, they did, yeah. I'm very particular. I'm very picky about, what happens on a set. I'm all about access. I'm all about advocacy. But yes, it was a show that really probably was the first to have that many deaf actors. But I'd like to see more since that show, but it was a great, great show to begin with, and I want more of it. I would love to see more of it.
Progress is very slow.
It is. It's very frustrating. That's why I keep talking about it, and I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. I'm just being factual. I'm being factual about it.
We don't hear complaints. We just hear facts, so thank you.
Exactly.
And now we come to CODA 2021.
CODA.
Yes, CODA, the Oscar-winning Apple TV Plus film. You played Jackie Rossi. It's based on the French-Belgian film La Famille Bélier. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. And for those who haven't seen it...
I never saw it. I never heard of it.
For those who haven't seen it, which would probably not be very many of us, it centers on a teenager named Ruby, who is the only hearing member of her deaf family in Massachusetts. And she is torn between her loyalties to her family and their fishing business and her passion for singing. And of course, your on-screen husband, played by Troy Kotzer, will go on to win the Oscar for supporting actor. You have said that one of the most appealing aspects of the film was that it was, quote, authentically written. And I want to know, what is authenticity to you on the page? How do you know when something feels real and when you get a sense that this person doesn't know what they're talking about, they don't understand deaf culture, they don't understand deaf characters? What are the hallmarks of that?
Authenticity is the truth. So it's all about the truth. It's not pretense at all. Authenticity is not something that, you make up. It's not subtle whatsoever. As far as what the script was, I made sure that Troy was hired because they wanted to have a hearing actor originally play the deaf role. As much as I would have loved to have worked with whomever they thought of as an actor to play it, George Clooney or whatever, I don't know who they were thinking of, it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't be right. I was driving here today and I saw George Clooney on some big billboard and I thought, oh gosh, I'd love to work with him. But at the same time, on CODA, no way. Just like when they cast actors, they cast for a reason. So CODA was the reason that Troy had to play that role. It was written as a deaf father to the father of a young girl who wanted to sing who happened to be hearing. So you need to hire a deaf actor who knows how to play a deaf role to play deaf.
So how did it feel when you saw him standing on that stage, accepting his Oscar 35 years after your win, and he remains the second deaf actor after you to win? What emotions ran through your body that night?
I had to contain myself because I wanted to really cry. But I would have ruined my makeup. But it was about him, not me. And it was about time, I said to myself. It was about time. 35 years is ridiculous. And so I was like a mother being so proud of her child, but not really because I wasn't old enough to be his mother. But I must have been, I was very, very proud. I was the proudest woman in the room.
Did it feel like a way to revisit your own win in a happier place for yourself?
Very happy, yes. Almost bittersweet, however. In an odd way, it was a bittersweet moment. Because this was for real. It was genuine, his happiness. It was deserved. And the person who gave it to him, that was real. The actress who gave it to him. It was happy. It was real. Everything was happy at that moment. Unlike my time. And that was a moment that he deserved. And it was, I'm not saying that I didn't deserve it, but
there was more joy.
There was more joy in his acceptance, yes.
I'm so happy for him. And I'd like to talk about your work as a director now in the show Accused in 2023. And for those who don't know, it's producer Howard Gordon's anthology series, and you directed an episode called Ava's Story, about a married couple who discover their newborn is deaf, and they want to pursue a surgical procedure, but the surrogate, who is also deaf, feels she has to intervene, and she abducts the baby. And this was your first time directing.
I was very honored to be given the opportunity to direct. I would have never thought, but am very grateful to Howard Gordon for that opportunity to direct, for him to put that trust in me to direct this episode. He said to me that it was a no-brainer, in his words, a no-brainer for me to direct this because of the story and what it was all about. Marlee Matlin, who wrote it, even though she's a hearing woman, she worked with various deaf people. She did her homework. She talked to people of all kinds. That was my first question, like, who is it? How did she know what to do? How did she know how to write this? All the various intricacies in the story. Because me being as picky as I am, I wanted to know how it all came about. I'm a pain in the ass, but I rightfully am a pain in the ass. And I like her a great deal, by the way, and we work very well together. So they said that they chose me to direct because clearly it was authentic. Somebody who gets it. And it was a fun experience. It was a lot of work, but it was fun and hard at the same time. And I hope that there's more opportunities to be able to do that again if I get the chance.
Have you had any other offers to direct?
No, I have not.
And how frustrating is that for you? Do you want to direct?
I would love to direct. I'm waiting for the opportunity to direct. I have opportunities that I have in the works, but it hasn't. The timing hasn't happened in the right way yet. And I don't want to sound like I'm on some sort of ego trip, but I want to be able to direct something that just fits me.
So I'd like to talk about the documentary, Marlee Matlin, Not Alone Anymore. Came out this year. Stunning, stunning movie. It's available to be streamed. And it's directed by Shoshanna Stern, who's an actor and who is also deaf. And I wanted to know, was it an imperative for you that a director of a documentary about you also be deaf? Was that something that was very important to you?
Absolutely. I insisted only because I needed somebody that I could talk to who would understand me, who understood my lived experience as a deaf person. What better way to work together than with someone else who was deaf, telling my story? Particularly, we're talking about life in general and all the questions that they might have had. I knew that we would have a great time together. I mean, like, we're having a good time together. This is certainly great. And I feel comfortable with you asking me questions. And the questions you have are wonderful. But at the same time, working on a documentary about my life, I needed to go into depth in a different way. I was happy with the choice that I made, even though she had never directed a documentary before. When they asked me originally, when American Masters approached me to say, we'd love you to do an episode of our series, and I said, on one condition, that we need to have a deaf woman director. And they said, well, who would that be? And I said, Shoshanna Stern. And they said, oh, well, has she directed before? And I said, no. And they said, oh, okay, well, we have a female director already on board. And I said, well, that's great, but she needs to be deaf. And they called Shoshanna, and she said, oh, did she know that you're choosing me? And the American Master said, yeah, she's the one who chose you. But hey, it worked out. And what she did was absolutely brilliant. In my opinion, I couldn't have imagined anyone else directing this documentary. And I'm very, very proud of the final product, of how she did it, how it turned out. I tip my hat to her, really I do.
It's a beautifully made piece. And I think my favorite scene in the film is when you're visiting, I think it's one of your brother's homes in Illinois, and you're standing in the kitchen, and everyone is talking around you. And we see your face as you sort of look sort of lonely as everyone is conversing, and you are sort of silent. And you sign to the camera, I'm bored. And it's a funny moment, but it's also a reminder of the chasm that exists between deaf people and hearing people, even in their own families. Why was it important for you to include that scene in the movie?
I had zero input into what was going to be included in the movie. And I didn't even know that she was going to put that in the film. So what you see there, I mean, listen, it's authentic. And I saw the film 2 weeks before we went to Sundance. That was the first time I saw the movie. And again, I didn't have any input. I didn't help her direct. I didn't show up even for any of the other
So you
interviews.
didn't say anything was off limits? You didn't tell her what to include?
Not one thing. Not one thing was off limits. There was one thing I did ask her to not do, is that after they left my house, when they filmed me signing at the end to Billy Joel's song, I said, you don't have to put that in there, please. Because it's my little hidden talent of signing Billy Joel songs. And I'm going to get back to that point. But I didn't show up for any of the other interviews that they did with other people. I didn't even ask her how they went. I didn't do anything. I said, you know what? Have at it. Do whatever you want. And it was 2 years of all that, of while she made the documentary. I just didn't want to pay attention. I was just the subject. That was it. And I think for me, that's very unusual. For being a person who likes to be in control, I can be a control freak. I'm a Virgo. So I thought, but in this case, I'm just going to leave it alone. That being said, when I saw the movie 2 weeks before Sundance, when I saw that scene that you referred to, and I said, I'm bored, I was like, oh my God, oh shit. I'm going to hurt my family's feelings. What happened was, when I saw that, and I understood what I was saying, what I was doing when I said that was, I knew Shoshanna was in the other room, behind closed door. There was no, I couldn't see the camera. They were in the room. I was expressing to her, or reaching out to another deaf woman, saying to her, I was feeling alone. everyone was talking, everyone was hearing. So I was looking at the camera as if I was talking to her directly, and I was saying to her, I'm bored. And she kept that.
Very honest. Very honest.
It was a very honest reaction. And my family was hurt, and they still are sort of hurt, but it is what it is. I mean, it's the truth. It's the truth.
So the subtitle of the movie is Not Alone Anymore. And I wanted to know, do you feel that you're not alone anymore? And did Troy Kotzer's win at the Oscars help to push you forward in that state of mind?
You're right. Absolutely right. I mean, not alone anymore is slow. It means definitely I'm definitely not alone anymore, for sure. But it's not just that. It's not just about Troy winning the Oscar, but life in general. I'm not alone anymore. It means that I'm not alone anymore. Don't think that we live in isolation, that we are invisible. That's what that title means. That we are no longer in the shadows. You know, I mean, life is funny that way, that sometimes it's not that you need to be deaf to feel alone. Most of the title doesn't come from me. I mean, I didn't make up the title. Shoshanna she chose the title as a result of something I said, that she wanted to have to, I mean, it was originally intended to talk about at the Oscars, that I wasn't alone anymore. But then Shoshanna took it to interpret that it meant something on so many other different levels. So I just wanted to say that.
What makes you happy these days?
What makes me happy these days? What makes me happy is, as long as my family is healthy, the fact that when my kids have jobs, knowing how that can be. And there's Venmo. Mom, I'm a Venmo bank, I guess. But my kids are my top priority, really. It's tough out there these days. And when I'm able to work, and when I'm able to work closely with the people that are important in my life, to understand what's going on in this world, if I can make heads or tails of it, that makes me happy. And really, that's about it. I want us all to get along one way or another.
What can we in this room and outside of this room do to better support deaf artists in Hollywood? What is one thing that you would like each of us to try to do in our work?
You know what? You don't necessarily have to learn American Sign Language or understand deaf people's language to be able to work with us. You can create stories. You can collaborate with us. If you want to be able to expand your world, work with us. Ask us, what is it that we can do to help tell stories? What is it that you need from us? And if there's an opportunity or desire, just talk to us. Let us write. Let us, I mean, there are so many, there's so much ableism and autism that's going on in Hollywood. There's so much that I've seen where people, decide they know what kind of stories to tell, when instead we could tell so many interesting stories. There's so many isms out there that we need to get away from. I've seen a lot of deaf people try to make it in the industry, try to direct, try to write, try to act, try to do costumes, try to do makeup and hair, who want to make it in this industry to do what it is, or be a journalist. I mean, they do it on their own terms, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, and I've seen them every single day. People who are influencers, working in social media, they make it, but it's within the deaf community. And what they want to do is expand, but they find that they can't because there's no one that seems to take them seriously, or they're afraid to. But, I mean, it's really up to everyone.
Did you find that when CODA won Best Picture, that win came at a time when Hollywood was prioritizing what we would now call DEI, inclusion, within our business? And does it now feel a little performative looking back? Because I remember being at events where there would be someone interpreting for the audience during the CODA season, and then the next year I wouldn't see anyone interpreting. Once CODA was out of the race, it was as if we've checked a box.
I've said that. I've warned them. I said, look, that's performative. Yeah. And I knew it was going to be short-lived. And I they said, no, it's going to get better, right? And I said, no. And I was right. I reminded them, where are the interpreters? Where are they? One famous award stopped using interpreters, one famous award ceremony. And I said, where are your interpreters? And they're like, oh, well, you make a very good point that it is performative. People think once you do it once, that's it. Good enough. You had your moment in the spotlight, that's enough. And I'm glad you brought this up because it hits the nail on the head. I have to point out, the one group in Hollywood that is not performative, that is consistently providing access, that is talking about their dedication to it, they're constantly providing the best it is, and that's the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. I'm not saying I'm biased here, but as a governor, I've noticed with their commitment to DE&I, whether it comes to people with disability, they're providing equal access, having to do with, say, interpreters, having to do with captions, having to do with whatever the screenings that they have on the screening room, with all the different films that they provide, with all the different languages. They are phenomenally accessible. Anytime you ask, they'll provide an interpreter. Last night they had a screening of Children of Lesser God on their Oscar Sundays at the museum. So it was great. I thought, well, let's watch that old movie. And they surprised me with providing open captions for the film. And they had interpreters ready on the spot. So, I mean, and as a governor, as I said, for the actors branch in my second term, I've seen that they have never, ever failed to have access. Every event that I go to, they have 2 interpreters. They make sure that I have, for example, there are at the museum interpreters on call for every video, for every tour, for every event at the museum. They have interpreters on the set when you're ready at the Academy. They are top-notch when it comes to interpreters. And the Screen Actors Guild does the same thing. So there you go.
So if we could just replicate that times 1,000, we'd be in good shape.
They need to. We need to. Yeah. I mean, the White House is a different story. They had to be forced to provide interpreters. They had to be sued.
That's a whole other topic. Well, Marlee, I could sit and talk to you all day. You are such a hero, and I want you to know how much we appreciate everything you've done.
I didn't bore you all with my
You are stories. You're the opposite of boring. You're very funny. You're very entertaining. And you're very inspiring. And I'm so grateful that you came here today. And thank you for everything you've done. And we can't wait to see what you do next. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack.
My Hollywood Story is a production of Hippolyta Films and Entertainment. The series is written, produced, and hosted by me, Stacey Wilson Hunt. Executive producers for Hippolyta are Sonia Slutsky and Wendy Green. Our camera operator, sound mixer, and editor is Ramiro Cantu. Additional sound mixing provided by Luke Tierney. Original music for My Hollywood Story is by Madi Gavriel and Jenny Carr of Moon and Star. Our logo design was created by Brad Mitchell. I would like to give a special thanks as well to Soho House West Hollywood for being the official new home of our show. We couldn't do it without you. This episode of My Hollywood Story was recorded live at Soho House West Hollywood. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, leave a review, and let us know what you think.